Hello everyone, it's the 28th of March 2025. I'm Gary Waterman, a former UK police constable. We are living under a criminal satanic system and they are panicking massively. I urge you all to take part in sustained international working strikes and the withholding of all incorporation bills, including your water, tax, council tax, gas, electricity. Stop paying all taxes. If you're PAYE, then contact your employer. Tell them you're going to deal with your tax contributions at source through HMRC. Contact HMRC and say you cannot aid and abet a criminal system. The evidence is overwhelming. That is what we are living in. It needs to be safeguarded as soon as possible to protect humanity and the children, and they are not doing it. They are literally carrying on with their plans. And I'm going to show you evidence now that as certain banks are being exposed, Santander in particular, they're now closing many branches. I anticipate they're going to stop you getting your money out and steal it from you. So I urge you, as part of your boycott of this system, to withdraw any savings that you can, okay, immediately, okay, because I think everyone is at risk and their finances are at risk in this. Please get on board, stop working, stop paying your bills, and keep that going for as long as it takes. Of course, you need to prepare by getting stocked up, and you need to promote it, and you need to participate. The children are at stake, everybody, and they are not stopping, it appears. Here's part 3 of my evidence in relation to the banks. Articles confirming that many Santander banks are now closing as the exposure continues. Money saving expert from 3 days ago. Remember, I went into the bank and exposed a video on the 24th. Okay, and literally the day after these articles are being publicised. Santander closing banks. You need to get in and you need to take out your savings whilst you can. I suspect they're going to steal all of your money from you because they are now being massively exposed, okay, and their plans are being foiled in relation to full digital currency enslavement. So the next option for them is to take as much as they can, hide out in their secret locations, and then potentially carry out sinister attacks against humanity. And it's not just Santander. You can see here another very recent article in relation to Lloyds and NatWest as they're exposed. I just wanted to clarify a mistake I made in part 2 in relation to this, and the Balfour Declaration was in 1917, not 1817, as I made reference to Cater Allen. But the Balfour Declaration is very important, and we're going to come to that later in the document. In part 2, I also made reference to the Albert Pike letter document, but didn't really explain it. I've explained it on other videos, but this is a letter that I believe was authentic and explains the plan that they had for the 3 world wars. And it was a letter written by Albert Pike, a high-level occultist. Remember, we're talking about satanic cults with all of this now, and high-level Freemason, and a letter written to Mazzini, who was the head of the Illuminati, and therefore it makes the link to the Vatican being involved in this. And it sets out the 3 world wars. And you can see here, you can pause this if you want to, and you can see there's as we know, there's a fairly significant gap between World War II and what we're seeing now, which I believe is World War III. And I think they were waiting for a certain thing to happen and the exposure of their criminal system to get to such an extent that it would trigger the World War III plans that they have here. And you can see at the bottom of where it says World War II, you can see it would then be restrained and held in check until the time when we would need it for the final social cataclysm, which is what we're seeing now, the Freemason satanic attack against humanity. And as it says at the bottom of the World War III section, it would result in the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, in other words, Satan, brought finally out in the public domain. So continuing on, we got to HSBC Bank PLC. All banks are involved in this, okay? All banks are involved in this international conspiracy against humanity linking into child trafficking and satanic cults. Here's HSBC Bank PLC. Now remember, HSBC was mentioned on the royal family document that we looked at in part 2. So HSBC Bank PLC, and it was originally Incorporated in 1880, you can see at the bottom there. Company's house was 1844, which is the vessel they've been using for the crime. And you can see they changed their name in 1999. At no time before that, and no time after. That is 2 years before the World Trade Center disaster. Almost, well, certainly to the month, almost the same day. Now, a document within that company on the filing history confirms it has a different name. So it's a criminal entity company, Birmingham and Midland Banking. Not Midland Bank Public Limited, as it claims. So that's a falsification of the register. They've lied. They've said that it only had this name from 1880 to 1999. Well, that's a lie. That's fraud. We also have a link to Bank of Scotland. This is the other. Remember, Bank of Scotland was also mentioned on the Royal Family Company document that we looked at earlier. And that links in from James Coyle, one of the directors of HSBC. Here's Bank of Scotland, and it was incorporated in April 2002, not long after the World Trade Center disaster. The same director links to Lloyds Bank ID Nominees Limited. And we're going to come to that later, because these same two companies link, I believe it's the same two companies, connect to the payment system. Because what I'm talking about at the beginning here is the direct debit guarantee, which involves direct debits, obviously, and backs payments, etc. And we're going to come to that a little bit later. And these same companies feature through the research of that. Now, one of the directors within HSBC connects to JP Morgan, Casanova Holdings. This is already featured throughout my fraud. This makes the link to the Fleming family. And you can see on the right, this company, first of all, it's care of Mazars LLP here in London. That links to the World Trade Center disaster. And it was started in February 2001, same year as the World Trade Center disaster, and dissolved as I was exposing the fraud on the 10th of November 2023. They panicked and they dissolved it because they knew what was coming. And here is the same director. Remember, this is all the same director now, Richard. Links to the National Westminster Bank Public Limited Company. Now, remember, that was what part of my complaint was about, that they were fraudulent. But they're all centralised and connected. You can see this now. All of them go back to the same people. They're all involved in this international fraud against humanity. And they're providing the illusion of choice when there really is none. Okay, democracy is also false. And they're trying to capture you and enslave you into what you are being led to believe is a system of choice. There isn't any, because it all goes back to the same criminal, fraudulent entity companies, and they all have a financial and legal interest within each other. You can see the same director. Remember, we just said about the Balfour Declaration. Well, here's Balfour BT PLC, a very important company. Balfour started in I think it was the early 1900s. That connects to Egypt very significantly, and Egyptian archaeology, which JP Morgan was also involved in the archaeology of the pyramids, and also with the Stonehenge. So I forgot the name then. Okay, so that means because they're involved in a deceptive criminal system, they can't be trusted in anything else. It's very likely that they've changed all of our history in relation to publishing and education and media, but also in relation to archaeology. Okay, remember, Satanists are all about deception, mass deception, so nothing can be trusted. And at every opportunity, they are providing, very likely, deception and lies, and then mocking humanity for not realizing what they're doing to humanity. So here's Balfour Beatty, and that will relate to the Balfour Declaration, which was in 1917 and involved the Rothschilds shaping Israel how it is today. All a massive deception against every faith group. Okay, so Christian, Muslims, Judaism, all will be being deceived by Satan, or Satan occult, shall we say. Now, the same director that we were just looking at links to GlaxoSmithKline. This is very important, because GlaxoSmithKline then makes the connection to the intervention that we were all forced to have since 2019. And I suspect they were panicking. They created the false COVID outbreak, and they were planning on removing billions of people And I suspect they can still plan to do that, and that the vaccines were a false flag to what may be their plans coming. I'm hoping it can be averted through the exposure, but we can't rely on that, in relation to directed energy, and also potentially, if they're real, a threat from nuclear escalation. I suspect that it's more likely going to be the directed energy threat that they're going to use, because they're not going to want to destroy their own planet. They'll use that as a last resort and hide out in their tunnel systems in Switzerland and other locations. So I suspect the real immediate threat is from the directed energy, so from the cell towers, and they need to be disabled. Another director within HSBC on the right there, Roger Emerson, links to another GlaxoSmith company. Okay, we're going to come to GlaxoSmithKline in a moment. Anthony Hales within HSBC on the right links to the Royal NAFI. So the Royal NAAFI, or NAFI, was incorporated in 1920. It's quite an old company, and it changed its name on the 13th of September 2022. Okay, this is a few days after the death of the Queen, which was on the 8th of September. And I suspect that is all related to the exposure, if she actually did die. And it's a fraudulent criminal entity company, because you can see the name is different. The Navy, Army and Air Force Institute. See, there's no Navy in the wording. Criminal, fraudulent entity company, now connecting to the military. And unfortunately, anyone thinking the military is going to come and save them, or anyone that's part of these government organisations are going to can save them, are very much misled, because that is not the case. We are alone in this. Those that are connected to this satanic system are all compromised by what appears to be the satanic cult. Same director links to a football club here. You can see Aston Villa FC Limited. Those who follow my evidence will know that football clubs feature right throughout the fraud, and that's because there's a lot of money going through football clubs, so it allows the money laundering, and also it allows you have obviously international interest from different political figures across the world, particularly the Middle East and Russia. Okay, and it's the perfect opportunity to launder criminally obtained money through the football clubs. Now, I've also done another video. I suspect that the Hillsborough disaster was a deliberate attack on humanity by this satanic cult, because they set up in 2000, and I think it was 12 actually, same year as the God Particle, a company, when the investigation started, the most expensive financial criminal investigation in the United Kingdom's history. Fraudulent criminal entity companies that I'm pretty sure it went back to the London Law Agency again, so then made that connection back to the satanic church. So I suspect that Hillsborough disaster, and those of you who don't know what it was where many people died. I think it was nearly 70 people died in a football stadium in I think it was 1989. I could be wrong without looking. And apparently it happened because there was a fire under one of the stands, and the gates were not opened by the police in time and things like that. I suspect it was all deliberate to then lead to an investigation, to then launder more taxpayers' contributions money and defraud the public of trillions in relation to it. So anyway, this director within HSBC, David Lister, links to Nuffield Health. Okay, now remember, what they have got going here is a problem, reaction, solution, crime against humanity. They create the problem, and that will include health problems. I suspect cancer was deliberately introduced, and I've seen evidence to suggest that. So then they bring in a solution, or what they're claiming to be a solution within the healthcare system, and request more tax contributions through that system to defraud the public even more. Remember, this is satanic. Think of the most evil thing that's going on, and it's going on. And it all ties in relation to this company's house fraud. So here's Nuffield Health Company. It's a private health company, I believe. And you can see it claims that its original name was Nuffield Nursing Homes in 1957. Changed its name. The only time it changed its name, 2 years after the World Trade Center disaster. Almost to the day. Okay, see September. 1st September 2003. And it's a criminal, fraudulent entity company. Satanic. And this is what they've done. They've done this right under everybody's noses for many, many years. And this is part of their evil satanic mocking of humanity because they think that humanity is stupid, okay, and not intelligent enough to understand what they've been doing to us. And they've even written that in one of their documents. Now, here we have a link to the Channel Tunnel group within HSBC, another Channel Tunnel company. And of course, that's a huge project that took place, and it's the perfect opportunity for them to defraud the public of trillions, if not billions, through that, because the banks, remember, are falsifying the figures for any companies involved in this and sending the real money into offshore accounts. Then it comes back to these criminals through various means, and they transfer it into tangible assets such as yachts, properties, holidays, cars, sex parties, etc. Things that hides the money. So here's the Channel Tunnel Group. And the reason I've shown the Channel Tunnel Group there is because I recently did research in relation to Pfizer, and some of you may not know, but that was one of the producers of the vaccines, okay, for the outbreak. And here is the Pfizer research, and there's criminal, fraudulent Pfizer companies all the way through. I'm going to send this document out separately on on my channels. And Pfizer, for example, Pfizer Consumer Healthcare on the right here is a fraudulent entity company. Started in 1913, changed its name for the first time in 1990 on the bottom left here, and they're claiming it was called International Chemical Company Limited. Now that in itself is worrying, isn't it? We're talking about chemicals relating to vaccine company, okay? What could they be putting within us, okay? And that's a criminal fraudulent entity company as an example. This is the incorporation document, International Chemical Laboratories Limited. Well, that's not what's on the register, and the date matches around that time, and it's a forged criminal register and creating a criminal entity company in relation to the vaccines. And at the bottom there you can see 10th of November 1913 on the incorporation document, and the register states that the only name that it has from the 6th of November 1913 is International Chemical Company Limited. It's a lie. In criminal law, you have to have the modus operandi, which is the mental capacity to understand and what you're doing, and then the actus reus is to carry out that crime. So they've had the document in front of them, they've attached it to the register, they've had the simple job of transferring the information onto the electronic register, and they've deliberately forged it and put another company name. So the crime is complete under their own legislation and law. I won't read all of this. This is on the Pfizer document, but there's fraud all the way throughout in relation to the Pfizer companies and the vaccines. And the reason I mention it is because as you go down, it then makes connection to Kent and therefore the Archbishop of Canterbury again on the right. Fraudulent companies in relation to chambers of commerce. More chambers of commerce, and then eventually somewhere it mentions again the we have fraudulent weapons manufacturers or aerospace companies based again in this one is in West Sussex. Sorry, I'm just trying to scroll through the page. And they're fraudulent. Jordan's Limited on it. Jordan's and Sons Limited. And then, sorry, I couldn't find it. Here we go on the Pfizer document, Eurotunnel Developments. So that now makes a link, remember, to the connections that we've just been making very quickly. And you've got to remember there's over 5 million registered companies. We're talking about, in the whole of this document, maybe 40, 50 companies. Probably not even that, because the links are very quick. So looking further into this Santander complaint document, just to confirm here, so my previous research in relation to the Iona prophecy, okay, which I was being led to believe that would lead to a deceptive end of the world prophecy, and I think what they're trying to do is fit an apocalyptic deceptive event into biblical prophecies that they've triggered that are falsified to remove most of humanity and silence them as they become more exposed. I suspect that was their plan. I'm hoping that it's deceptive, or that it's certainly being averted if that was their plan. And remember, I'll come back to the foundation of this. We have a criminal, financial, deceptive system, criminal, remember, at the very basis and foundation of all of this that we're talking about. So everything else they do, none of it can be trusted because of this system they've got in place that exploits everyone. And so this is the Iona document, before Iona document, and I'm just going to show this quickly because it also links into, you can see, GlaxoSmithKline. Okay, we've just been talking about it. So that makes another link to the interventions that we were all forced to have in relation to the apocalyptic, deceptive events by these very evil, sinister, satanic individuals running the world. And of course, there's fraud all the way throughout, the same fraudulent companies. I'm not going to go into too much detail on this, just showing the screenshots of the before Iona document. You can see on the left here, Jordan's and Sons, remember, started in 1965, the year before the World Trade, before the Satanic Church. And this is, so there's various vaccines. There's also mentioned on here actually is AstraZeneca. There's HSBC again on the before Iona document. So you can see how quickly it all links in. And somewhere further down, I just want to show you the AstraZeneca link. And then you can see that all the vaccine companies are linked very, very closely, financially and legally together. There you go. So AstraZeneca Treasury Limited. Previously, there was also AstraZeneca UK Limited. And you can see on the incorporation document, it's not very easy to read on here because of where I've screenshot it, but Jordan's Limited. So AstraZeneca UK is a criminal, fraudulent entity company. And Andrew Bridgen has companies that also started with Jordan's Limited. And supposedly, he's calling out for action against the vaccines. But he's refusing to expose the real problem, which is this fraud linking into the directed energy threat and the child trafficking. And therefore, he is part of a false flag deception in relation to the vaccines. I've had private conversations with him, and he's now refusing to respond. So moving further down, so these are all the before Iona document. I'm not going to look too much at that, and we'll come back to where we were. So direct debits. Remember, I went into, if you looked at part one, you'll know that I was trying to make a claim through the direct debit guarantee scheme because it should cover fraudulent transactions. Now, I know it's covered similar things to this because stupidly, quite a few years ago, I purchased tickets for the Isle of, funny enough, for the Isle of Wight festival, not knowing what it was all about back then. And I bought those tickets through a criminal company, not knowing at the time. I thought it was the genuine site, never received the tickets, paid the money, of course, and it was about £400. Contacted the bank and they refunded it immediately. So I know that that is possible because this is a similar situation, because at the time of making those transactions and taking out those, the mortgage, for example, with National Westminster Bank, I didn't realise they were criminal fraudulent entity companies. So let's have a look at the direct debit guarantee, and here it is. But they've changed it, and we're going to look at when they changed it. Okay, now this is important because it ties in with the exposure of the evidence. So the direct debit guarantee on the right says every organisation using direct debit is inspected and verified by the banks before they're allowed to collect your money. The banks are responsible for money being refunded if things were to go wrong. So you can bet they're very thorough. They're criminal. That said, we know you want to be completely confident that you and your hard-earned money are in safe hands after all. The cash is being collected from your bank account, and that's why we have the direct debit guarantee. The guarantee applies to every single direct debit, protecting you just in case someone makes a mistake, like collecting your money on the wrong day or taking the wrong money. But it also covers for fraudulent activity. This is the guarantee, and they've changed it, and we're going to come to that in a minute. It says the guarantee is offered by all banks and building societies that accept instructions to pay direct debits. If there are any changes to the amount, date or frequency of your direct debit, the organisation will notify you normally in 10 working days in advance of your account being debited and as otherwise agreed. If you request the organisation to collect a payment, confirmation of the amount and date will be given to you at the time of the request. On the right there, if an error is made in the payment of your direct debit by the organisation or your bank or building society, you're entitled to a full and immediate refund of your amount paid from your bank or building society. Remember, it says immediate refund. Now, it is a mistake, because the mistake is where I wouldn't have paid them had I known they're criminal and was involved in international child trafficking and money laundering, okay? Because they're fraudulently registered, pretending to be a company, a lawful company, when they're not. Now, as you saw from the letter in part 1 that they supposedly sent me, but they hid that letter. I didn't get that on an email. They knew I couldn't go home. It claimed that the dispute is with the company. You can't have a dispute with a company that doesn't legally exist. They shouldn't be engaging in any way because they're criminal and fraudulent. And the bank would know this because they're part of it. Okay? So they're completely satanic, criminal, and exploiting everyone. And I urge everyone to withdraw all of your savings, because I really do think we are heading to them stealing everyone's money. They're not doing the right thing and stepping up to this. It says further on here, if you receive a refund you are not entitled to it, you must pay it back when the organisation asks you to. Well, that makes sense. But immediately they have to refund it. And they've refused. In, was it August? August last year, I made the complaint. I've had nothing. I've had no refund, nothing at all. Okay, and that's because they know they're in serious trouble. This is why they're closing the banks. And this is why they're backed into a corner, and they know it. And we're in a very critical time, because they're going to try and enslave everybody. It appears they're still heading towards that, into a satanic system. So that's the direct debit guarantee. But it says here that on the left, the direct debit guarantee protects you from fraudulent or incorrect payments, ensuring a full and immediate refund from your bank in such cases. Well, they're now breaching their direct debit guarantee, including the manager that was identified in that video that I did in part 1. So when were the last changes to the direct debit guarantee? Oh, look, no surprise. According to this, there was a change in December 2022, as I'm exposing their international criminal system. There was another change in June 2024. And when you research, was there any changes prior to 2022? There are no results that come up. Okay, so this tells you they panicked as it was being exposed, changed the wording of the direct debit guarantee, because they knew everyone would be entitled to all of their refunds in relation to the crimes that have been taking place. So here on the right, you can see a quick bit of research confirms there is no time limit on when claims can be made for direct debit guarantees. And yet that letter from Santander claims, because I'm claiming back a little while ago, and it wasn't years ago, it wasn't a long time ago really, that I cannot have that claim. That's a lie. So when was the direct debit guarantee implemented? Well, it was implemented, according to this, it was first, itself was introduced in 1964, okay? And then, but here it sort of contradicts itself a little bit. And then 1970 was a key date when it was introduced then in the United Kingdom. Now, of course, that's 1 year before the World Economic Forum was created in 1971, which is all part of this. And on the right here, you can see that it confirms a date here. It mentions 1964 again. Key time. Now, I suspect the royal family, the real royal family, have been murdered in relation to all of this. And the evidence I'm acquiring suggests that took place around the early 1960s, late 1950s. And that's going to be shown in another video. So direct debit guarantees, an enhancement to the direct debit service, AUDIS, which stands for Automated Direct Debit Instruction System, was introduced. And let's have a look at that. So here's an article on AUDIS, which has pay.uk on it and backs. And you can see at the bottom there it mentions AUDIS. So pay.uk is a United Kingdom service company that provides people facilities and expertise in the UK payments industry. The company around UKPA was created on the 6th of July 2009. And then it ties into the CHAPS payments. Remember, this all links into the offshore transaction system, SWIFT International, which is criminal and fraudulent, and where they're laundering the money into their offshore accounts. And the history of it's quite interesting because Theresa May used to work for them. Okay, now it mentions NPSO, the new payment system operator. That becomes relevant to a lot of evidence I'm building, which appears to tie that in to the blood taken from children and to the satanic one world order plan to bring in a one world religion as well, full enslavement of humanity, and normalise the abuse, torture and murder of children and cannibalism, but in particular the murder of children for their blood. So let's have a look at Pay.UK Limited. Oh, just on Theresa May, she's very important. She was the one that introduced the Police and Crime Commissioners, the National Crime Agency and the Royal College of Policing, who are all involved in this international government fraud, okay, and was very much based around corporations. So Pay.UK Limited. And please, you can verify this evidence on Companies House. Here it is, Pay.UK Limited. Remember, this is the company that relates to the BACS payment systems and the direct debit guarantees. And they were incorporated in 2017. Not too sure who the Prime Minister was then, was it? It was either Theresa May or David Cameron, both involved massively in this. And you can see they changed their name. They were originally NPSO, okay? So NPSO is going to come in relation to the satanic control of the world religion, and we're going to talk about that in another document, NPSO. So one of the directors, Maria Willis, who was appointed in December 2024. Now remember, there's no verification through Companies House deliberately. It's all part of the deception. So many of the names can be false names being used, but the evidential links are still there because they've messed up. They've been doing this for so long that you can still find the connections confirming links to certain individuals in the fraud. So here's Age UK Limited, linked to that director. And of course, Age UK is a charity. And remember, you have the Freemasons that appear to be at the head of satanic cult, and they love their charities because it entices people in believing they're a good organisation when actually they're completely the opposite. And on the incorporation document for Age UK is Farah and Co. Those of you who follow my evidence will know that that's very important. That links to Ghislaine Maxwell and her companies. She was a director for Oxford Football Club and others, and this makes the link to the international child trafficking via it. Now on the incorporation document there's various other companies there, but these are the important ones further down on the document. Various age companies again, okay, so they will tie in, but also there you have a Royal Mail Pensions Trustees Limited. Okay, and this is important. We're all aware of the post office scandal linking into Royal Mail, the largest miscarriage of justice in human history, where over 900 postmasters were wrongly convicted of stealing money in relation to the post office, and then they tried blaming it on an IT issue. Okay, some of those postmasters committed suicide whilst they were wrongly convicted. Some of them died naturally, but it is this fraud that is behind it 100%, and they're lying about an IT issue. So here's Royal Mail Pensions on that document. You also have a GlaxoSmithKline link with Glaxo Trustees Limited. So we have a link then to the vaccines, the satanic vaccines. Okay, there's not much left of the document yet, but I'm going to do it in the next part. So please come back and watch part 4 of the evidence. Thank you.